Let's get started. So I want to welcome all the participants of this session. My name is Monika Niziołek. I will moderate this meeting. So I serve not only as the president of the Polish Evaluation Society, but also as a member of the advisory board of the NESE. NESE is a network of evaluation societies in Europe. And I would like to introduce my guests who represent various voluntary organizations for professional evaluations, so-called VOPE. There is Aida El-Khoury de Paula with us, who represents Iberian Association of Professional Evaluation, APROEVAL. Aida also serves as independent consultant in evaluation. There is Angela Wróblewski, Austria and Germany Society for Evaluations, so-called DGEVAL. And Angela is also a senior researcher at the Institute for Advanced Studies in Vienna. There is Professor Elisabetta Venezia, who represents University of Bari, Aldo Moro in Italy, but also Italian Evaluation Association. Maybe also will join us Nicola Orlando, who represents Italian Evaluation Association and is senior researcher in the Institute for Social Research in Milano, but unfortunately he's late due to very, important issues. And Dr. Tina Orfanidou, president of the Hellenic Evaluation Society. I am very happy that you agreed to contribute to our session. And during this session, we will initiate a discussion on the role of the key horizontal principles in contributing to more transformational and influential evaluation. So I think that if we want to think about the future evaluations, we should go beyond the just effectiveness, efficiency, and take into account other values, other principles. So I will start this session with the short information on the NESE project that gave rise to this session. And then I will ask my panelists to discuss three issues. First is their individual experience and good practices in evaluating selected principles. The second issue is are difficulties encountered in these evaluations. And last but not least, some recommendations concerning VOPEs activities, what we can do as a VOPE to enhance implementation of these principles in evaluation process. So I meant the project implemented by NESE in 2021-23. It was funded by the IOCE and EvalPartners. And the title of this project was Strengthening VOPEs Capacities in Europe, a Practical Approach for Streamlining the Evaluation of Key Horizontal Principles. So we considered 10 horizontal principles. It was equity, gender equality, social justice, partnership, good governance, innovation, inclusivity, democracy, human rights, and sustainable development. And we sent a questionnaire to 22 European VOPEs, and we got answers from 14 VOPEs. We asked how the VOPEs consider the key horizontal principles in their strategic documents. Then, after gathering the information, the data, we conducted SWOT analysis and gap analysis. And then we developed common reference framework that can support VOPEs in advocating for implementation of these principles in evaluation. And there is the report that summarizes our study. And we also prepared a chapter in a book, The Political Economy of Evaluation in Greece, Interdisciplinary Perspective for an Inclusive Forward-Looking Evaluation. So I will... just for a moment, I will put the link to the report in the chat, but let me start with asking Aida on discussing two principles. Aida chosen democracy and human rights principles in evaluation. Yes, Aida, please.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and thank you, Monica, for your invitation. And first of all, congratulations for the celebration of the 25th years of the Polish Evaluation Society and your commitment on personal commitment, Monica. Thank you. So, the aim of my presentation is to illustrate the inconsistency of achieving some evaluation purposes without a context of democratic system and human rights respects. I will focus in this my own evaluation experience, specifically data collection in the context of the occupied Palestinian territory. So for the first questions, some information like the program implemented from 2020 to 2024 with support from an international development agency and in collaboration with local partner organizations, aim to support democratic actors in building broad strategic alliances for progressive development. So the program priorities included countering threats to democracy and the human rights, advancing equality and workers' rights, promoting sustainability through a just transition, fostering peace and dialogue, increasing gender equality. The evaluation used the outcome harvesting methodology suggested by donor organizations and focused on the impact of behavioral changes among key actor groups and their contributions to the program's objectives. So it was a final evaluation, and this final evaluation took place between December 2023 and April 2024. Following various discussion among evaluation stakeholders on the feasibility of the evaluation, it was agreed to continue with the evaluation in spite of acknowledging the context of violence, restricted access to basic services, and widespread displacement. The requirements of the contract forced the evaluation to continue in a context of war, death, and famine. So, the next slides. This evaluation, as you see, this evaluation process faced significant contextual challenges and difficulties. To address the initial concerns, the primary challenges were to ensure the confidentiality and safety of the interviewees, and some actions were taken in that sense. So first of all, security concerns severely limited data collection. Local fieldwork in Palestine was ruled out early on due to safety risks for both partners and stakeholders. Online data collection methods so has to be adapted to a war context with challenges, many challenges, including psychological and emotional distress among interviewees due to trauma, oppression, and ongoing violence. Confidentiality and safety concerns requiring enhanced privacy measures. The need for flexible scheduling, adapted interview formats, and culturally sensitive communication. So, as evaluators, we faced constant delays, shifting dynamics, and the need to customize interview tools and protocols in real time. These conditions raised serious questions about data quality, ethical responsibility, and the very feasibility of conducting meaningful evaluation under such extreme circumstances. In addition, the existence of significant dynamics regarding the ability to plan for the civil society organizations program in the future, with announcement of the strategic partnership framework being discontinued by end 2024, the applicability of the finding and recommendations of the evaluation might be to a certain extent compromised by these dynamics. So, the first slides, please. Some reflection and ethical considerations from our own side as professional evaluators. Evaluations cannot always fulfill their intended role in all contexts. One of the most critical insights that was that the traditional evaluation approaches might lose relevance or legitimacy in context of war and systematic human rights violations, where the protection of life and dignity tasks precedence over any evaluative process. Evaluators face ethical responsibilities beyond technical aspects, requiring from on-site deep reflection on the potential impact and limitation of our work in fragile and violent settings. So, what VOPE, in our case, APRO-EVAL, Iberian Association for Professional Evaluation, can and should do. And here I will answer based on the responses provided by APRO-EVAL members and analyzed by the thematic working group professionalization of evaluation group that participate in the key horizontal principles project. So, first of all, the VOPE, APRO-EVAL, and the VOPE in general can play and should play a vital role in creating spaces for ethical debate and consensus building around democracy and the human rights principles in evaluation, helping define which principles should be prioritized depending on context and in guiding structured discussions on their practical application. Support the gradual development of flexible frameworks to integrate human rights and democracy principles into evaluation questions, identify relevant and feasible indicators, and avoid overlooking critical ethical and contextual aspects. The ultimate goal is to create guidance that is clear but adaptable, enabling evaluators to apply and assess key horizontal principles effectively, even under extreme conditions. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aida. I think that underlying the context of evaluation is very important. I remember that at the beginning when there was a change of regime in Poland, when we became a democratic country, there was a kind of slogan that there is no evaluation without democracy. Yes, so it shows its value, but on other hand, you know, we sometimes we have to evaluate humanitarian activities, yes, in very difficult context. So maybe we'll talk about this issue later, yes, how we can do it.
Okay. Yes, of course.
Thank you very much. So I would like to invite Angela to discuss the role of gender dimension in evaluation.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think this is also a field where context matters a lot and where context has changed in recent years, at least in the German-speaking countries. So I am personally work as an evaluator in the field of monitoring and evaluation of gender equality programs or inclusive measures at institutional, at national, and at European level. And I think it is important to distinguish between two different evaluation contexts when we talk about the gender dimension in evaluation. One context is the evaluation of gender initiatives or inclusive policies or diversity programs or things like that. In such a setting, it is quite without question that gender experts have to be involved, that gender expertise is available, which leads to adequate designs and methods that are implemented. When I talk about the gender dimension in evaluation, I mainly refer to the case when the gender dimension should be considered as a cross-cutting issue in evaluation of so-called neutral policies or programs. So where the gender dimension is not the core topic of the intervention. And in these settings, we see or I recognize a lack of competence among evaluators, but what is even more important, also among commissioners of evaluation. So if it's not asked to consider the gender dimension, it is very unlikely that it takes place, even if evaluators would aim for it. This also means that gender experts are not necessarily involved in the evaluation. And this leads to a lack of gender expertise in implementing the evaluation. And in fact, this means that the gender dimension is not considered, which leads to probably very extreme examples, even in countries where there is a legal obligation to consider the gender dimension. For instance, in Austria, gender budgeting is part of our constitution. So also in all evaluations, the gender dimension should be considered. But we have evaluations like, for example, the innovation premium, which is a quite big tax benefit program where companies can get tax benefits for research activities. Yeah? And we know in research, you on the one hand have individuals that are affected as researchers. And on the other hand, you have the topic of research, so also the gender dimension in research. But in the report that has been published on this evaluation, the word gender or women does not appear once. So the main argument for me to consider the gender dimension in evaluation is on the one hand that this is also a claim of the evaluation standards. So part of the standards is that all target groups that are affected by a program have to be identified, that assessments have to be fair, which also means that the gender dimension should be included. But there is also a quality argument, which is the most important one, in my opinion, that you need to have non-biased results. And if the gender dimension is ignored, results are per definition biased, in my, from my point of view. Next slide, please. Regarding the second question, what are the difficulties in that context? As I already said, there is this lack of awareness and gender competence among commissioners of evaluation, even in cases where there are legal requirements in place. But as I also said, the political climate is changing in Germany and Austria too. So what we see today is a lack of political will to consider the gender dimension. And at these times, other topics seem to be more pressing, especially related to budget constraints, which are used as an argument to take the gender dimension out and to simplify evaluation. There is also what I would call a competition of topics that should be considered as cross-cutting issues, like sustainability or digitalization, which also leads to the fact that the gender dimension is probably not seen as important as the other dimensions and therefore ignored. And, which is probably the most important point, is there is a lack of sanctions if the gender dimension is neglected, which is probably one of the most important barriers in that field. And what is somehow the role of VOPEs? Taking the German and Austrian Evaluation Society as an example, what we did and what is probably the case in several other VOPEs is that there has been a working group established already in 2008 on gender and gender mainstreaming in evaluation. It is a quite active working group, which developed guidelines for evaluators to consider the gender dimension, but also for commissioners when they formulate tenders, how to consider the gender dimension properly. And there has been quite big discussion in this working group and within DGVAL as such, focusing on gender competence as a basic competence, which all evaluators should have, which is distinguished from gender expertise. And in that context, specific profiles have been developed for gender competent evaluators, but also for gender experts, which in my opinion made the discussion about the topic easier, as it is not understood that everybody who deals with the gender dimension has to be a gender expert or has a gender studies background or things like that. So it's a bit taking out resistance. Yeah, and what the working group also tried, and where the working group has not been successful, is they tried to integrate the gender dimension in the revised version of the evaluation standards of DGVAL. This has not been successful, as I said, but there have been several publications on that topic where all this work or initiatives somehow became visible. What we as a board in DGVAL did was to formulate a statement on the use of a gender-sensitive language, which is probably a mini step, but it is a quite symbolic step. Yeah. And we try to have a gender-balanced board. But what I recognize is that there is limited engagement really to live this key horizontal principle in practice. So it is constantly a topic of discussion to use the gender-sensitive language, to try to have panels which are not male only and things like that. So it needs individuals still to keep the topic alive in the VOPEs as such. That's it from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Angela. I appreciate that you made this differentiation between treating key horizontal principles as cross-cutting issue, so we could use it as evaluation criteria in different projects, programs, yes. But on the other side, we can just conduct evaluation of the implementation of these principles. But anyhow, anyway, I think it's very important to have in such cases, in both cases, experts in our teams. Yes, so in case of every principle. Okay, thank you very much. So now I would like to invite Mihailo Diukic to discuss sustainable development. Okay, do we have Mihailo with us? Okay, so let's skip this piece and we will return to it later. Yes, and Tina, could you discuss the innovation and partnership, right?
Okay.
Thank you.
First of all, thank you very much for your kind and honor invitation. And I'm always glad to see distinguished colleagues and friends from NESE. I think that the way Angela concluded is very much also related to the innovation principle, because usually we have the practice of having thematic evaluations where there is always an issue of expertise and how to deal with the evaluation and how to find the specific metrics that could capture the innovation principle and the way innovation brings growth. in fact. And we know that our programs usually have targeted interventions that need to be evaluated exactly as the approach that was developed by Angela. But on the other hand, I think also that we are missing the horizontal practice as a transversal and cross-cutting issue. And perhaps more or less we are used to, in a way, to assess in our evaluations what we call good practices, which in a certain degree have some aspects of evaluation of innovation per se. But still, I think that the case in Greece is similar to what Angela described for gender. It's not always easy to understand. Here we have also some limitations on the way we conceptualize innovation. And we have some also another aspect that we almost have a fear of failing. So the way innovation is projected in most strategies and most evaluations have some limitations. No need to emphasize that it is a complex issue and that we need mixed methods, including counterfactual methods, to see what's the real effect of innovation. In Greece, some efforts have been made to see the effect on the what we call the regional innovation strategies, smart specialization, and also to develop some competencies. But I think that we have also at European level, and I think it is in your agenda, that at European level there are trends for using AI as a base to screen all database in order to see how innovation could be transposed into specific results. So I think that we do have a normative consensus, but we face many challenges in methodological integration, and some specific skills are needed, which are more obvious in technological and what we call hard innovation than social innovation. The latter could be more easily perhaps evaluated as a cross-cutting issue. What are the difficulties in innovation? We have the technological, methodological practices that move forward very fast. If we go to the next slide, we could see in detail that AI is present. But on the other hand, we have some other, let's say, limitations. And many of those lack of relevant metrics, the limited data availability, one of the most important ones, the stakeholders misalignment or limited participation, the bias towards success, and of course, the difficulty in time to measure the real impact in innovation puts some barriers in having the principle as a transactional one. What VOPEs could do to that extent? And I think that most important, we need to train evaluators to work with the principle. It's not an easy one. And also we need capacity on using mixed methods. And I've been following some conferences lately, and they are all say that we need to shift the model of social surveys using technological attributes that could screen and identify relations to what we need. So we need to develop those capacities, and so we need to think of specialized workshops on evaluating innovation, not perhaps the hard one in the thematic evaluations, but as we said, as a cross-cutting issue, and of course build the data literacy for innovation, because without this, no measurement can be done. In parallel, however, we have the topic of social innovation, which is increasingly become more visible. So I think that along with the concept and the criterion of the principle of innovation, we also can advocate for, at least for the main strategies, social innovation that also involves partnership principle could be present in those strategies, and later on, of course, being evaluated. And building on the social innovation aspect, because social innovation requires all parts of the quadruple helix, as we say, we could pass to the partnership principle, which is, I think, perhaps we are more accustomed to evaluate. We usually start by having a stakeholders mapping in order to identify all partners. And of course, we need to be very, very careful in addressing all these parts in our evaluation, so to have a consolidated view and avoiding bias, let's say, findings or recommendations. We could move to the next slide, Monica, about the partnership.
Yes, I just would like to make a small comment, because we had in Poland evaluation of the project aimed at social innovation. However, there was no meta evaluation nor evaluation at the program level. So I think the many interesting conclusion just was lost, yes, or disappeared. So it's also important. Okay.
Okay. And there are two things in the partnership principles. First, I started by saying that we as evaluators should identify all relevant stakeholders and involve them in the evaluation. So in that sense, the evaluation most of the times considers all parts being involved in a strategy, in a program, in an intervention. But on the other hand, it's not the case perhaps for the designing of the intervention or the implementation or the monitoring. So here we could distinguish two issues. Of course, saying that the exercise about the mapping in the methodological approach of the evaluation should be quite visible, and for the commissioners to ask all parties being involved in the evaluation practice, even though sometimes we could identify some limited participation, because you may invite them, but they're not always eager to participate. On the other hand, we need to assess as evaluators whether the partnership principles have been considered in the design of the policy or the monitoring. A good example for those two was the evaluation of the National Strategy for Social Inclusion in Greece, and of course the design and monitoring of the National Strategy for Roma Inclusion and the LTC strategy being drafted actually in Greece this period. And what are the obstacles? I could say that sometimes we find the limited engagement of the key stakeholders, which brings an unbalanced, feedback of what you need in order to correctly evaluate. This should be very carefully taken into consideration, because, who has the power usually try to impose his or her opinion. We have different organizational cultures and environments we need to consider. So we need in a smart and balanced way to find where we need to respect those. Sometimes low visibility and trust, because they think, the stakeholders participating think that it is just a typical procedure and they are not always heard. And of course, in order to perform an accurate and methodologically correct evaluation, you need resources, and you need to consider the triangulation, several methods, many focus groups, many interviews. So you need to have more time and budget to do so. And what a VOPEC would do in Greece, we need, first of all, to develop again the competencies. I stick to that because, as VOPEs, we have a specific strategy and mandate. You cannot always jump into others' fields, but I think that I could say that competence, development of competence standards, again, tools for the partnership assessment in all cycles of the policy. I mean, from the design to the implementation, to the monitor, to the evaluation. Of course, the ethics and the transparency, that all voices are heard. And of course, again, which is very, very important in order to gain this trust, is to give them back the feedback on how their recommendations have been taken into the final recommendations, that the findings and the recommendations that an evaluation presents. So this is all from my part. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Tina. I think that partnership could be an evaluation criterion. Yes, in case of many projects, because they are implemented.
More easily than the others. More easily than the others.
Maybe, yeah, easier.
Yes. Easier, yes.
We don't need maybe a special expert, yes, here.
Yeah. Yes, but so still some of the tools could be, let's say, upgraded in the way you assess this partnership. We stick to the traditional ones so far.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, thank you very much. So now I would like to invite Elisabetta to discuss equity principle.
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for giving me the possibility of intervening today. And first of all, I would like to bring some greetings from Nicola Orlando, who had some overlaps in some commitments. So I am really regretful for that, and I'll try to bring some of his thought as well in this speech of today. The idea is to give some reflection on the equity in evaluation practices, and to bring some experiences that we had in the working activities, and in particular both in research and professional life. So I would like to share some observation on how equity principle can be integrated, or can be struggling and be integrated into the evaluation across different contexts. And also I would like to bring also a personal experience that I had in a cost action just on equity in the transport sector, which brought us to write guidelines and roadmap on the EU equity planning some years ago. And these guidelines are available and can be considered for application in some other sector apart transport one. So with particular regard to the Italian situation, equity can be considered as an element that is a part of the evaluation of social policies, and in particular it is applied in the labor market intervention. And so this is the main elements that we can consider when we are talking about these aspects, and in particular for those projects that are funded by the European Social Fund, and more recently by the National Recovery and Resilience Plan. And so this concept strongly impose, its presence, in particular with also the consideration of some indicators that are provided by the Italian Institute of Statistics, ISTAT, on the equitable and sustainable well-being indicators. And so they are provided since the 2016, and they are integrated also in the national budget cycle. So it is a very important element for us. However, we should point out that equity tends to be understood also as a more mainly as a normative aspiration, and more than an operational evaluation criteria. And in particular, it's often overlaps on with concepts like equality or social justice, and without a clear analytical tools to assess distributive fairness or differential impacts across population groups. So normally we use some indicators like the distribution index like Gini or what else, but this is a different story by considering equity, the equity concept. There are some encouraging developments that are emerging in some regions in Italy. In particular, I can mention, for example, Tuscany and Lombardy and Puglia as well, where there are some evaluation of social inclusion services, and in particular with regard to Puglia, in the transport sector, we are considering the equity concept, and there are some equity sensitive indicators, we can put like this, and so we are measuring the accessibility, for example, to services or to the labor market, for those who are supported, for example, people with disabilities, or analyzing the territorial distribution, for example, of transport services or care services as well. And we are assessing also some differential outcomes that are coming by the social economic status. So there are small-scale innovation, and there are some signals, say, on a shift from a generic fairness and rhetoric towards a concrete measurement of the equity concept. With regard to the broader European area, we may say that there is for sure a normative foundation. So there are European pillar of social rights, for example, and there is the recommendation on access to social protection, and there is also the ESF plus regulation, that all of them are giving emphasis to fairness and to non-discrimination and equal opportunity as core values that should be considered in projects and also in policies, and so we need to evaluate before the implementation of both elements. And as NESE comparative study clearly shows, the translation of these principles into the evaluation practice remains fragmented across European countries, and also among VOPEs as well. I mean, there are different ways of considering this element, both in policies and in the implementation of projects. And as I can say, by my point of view, that both in Italy and also across Europe, there is a sort of paradox, which is in the sense that there is a very strong normative frameworks and also consensus among the need of implementing the equity concept. But in real terms, we have a very weak methodological integration. So the process is very slow, even though we are aware about the importance of this objective that we should take into consideration when we run the evaluation, also when we are proposing projects or policies. In the end, I mean, there are very few projects and policies that are really considering the equity matters. And so we need to make it for sure more visible and also measurable in our evaluation. And for this, I would like also to remind again the possibility of using the guidelines and the roadmap as a product of the cost action of transport on equity appraisal. And there are some difficulties for sure in the application of the equity principle, and this is also because there are some conceptual ambiguity on what is equity in real terms. So many practitioners or commissioners or policymakers use equity or equality or social justice in the same way, as there are interchangeable, but it is not like this. I mean, there are different concepts in economic and social terms, and also the way that we are going to measure them is completely different. So they cannot be used one another. And so this creates for sure a confusion when we try to define a concrete evaluation criteria. And so we need to ask to ourselves how we can assess the equity assessment, and how there is the proportional distribution among different parts of a population or cluster of population. And this something that can include the equity concept or not. So there are some compensatory outcomes for disadvantages groups sometimes. Without conceptual clarity, for sure, we may say that equity remains quite vague. And so we need to make the concept more clear, not only for the evaluators, but I think that also for proposal, for the policymakers, and all those who are involving in a decision-making process based on the evaluation outcome. And on the other side, there is a problem of disaggregated data. So we do not have always data available for measuring the equity concept. And so normally, to assess the equity, we use the gender elements or gender data, or we normally use age, income level, geographical area, disability status, or a migration background. And I mean, there are several elements that can altogether be used for the measuring of equity, but such data sometimes often are unavailable, are poorly collected, or we do not have time series, so there is not a constant relation of such information, and sometimes they are also protected by the privacy regulations, so they cannot be used publicly for research reason or for implementing in real policies. So without granular data, evaluators cannot identify all these hidden biases or unequal effects in a program delivery and also in project as well. So this is a very weak point. And also, I may say that there are also some problems that are related to the technical competencies of evaluators, as I mean, it was mentioned before by Angela and the others that were giving their speech. Equity-sensitive evaluation requires specific skills, and we need to understand distributional analysis, recognizing the intersectional inequalities, and we need also to apply the fairness metrics in order to evaluate these aspects. And these competencies are still limited. I mean, they are not so often very easy to be found, and especially among evaluators or those who are evaluating policies and projects, so say evaluation commissioners. And there are also few structured training opportunities, so I think that we can work on this in order to give a fair ground also to the young evaluators and to focus on these aspects, because we really need people with this type of specialization for measuring in particular these elements. On the other side, we have to consider also that there are some political and budgetary constraints. So this is another key point. This is an issue that in this case can become really a political one, that we need to bargain, or we have to discuss with the political party in order to give emphasis to this element. So compared to the principles like gender equality or environmental sustainability, which have a very strong advocacy coalitions and also dedicated funding, very often for equity, these receive very few visibility, and for sure, fewer resources allocated in order to give emphasis to a key element. So in periods of budget constraints, governments prioritize measurable short output over long-term fairness-oriented outcomes. So, and for sure, equity is a second best choice apart from those who have the priority like sustainability, that it is really important, but unfortunately discover the importance of some other key elements. And this is not unique to Italy. It is not only something that is happening for Italy, but also for the other countries. And even though there is this cross countries believe that leaving no one behind, this is a very hot statement that we use generally talking in every framework. Unfortunately, we need to consider that this is not very often applied. And so even though it is very important, for example, if we consider Agenda 2030, these are key elements, but unfortunately, when we are going to measure the equity of also some of the Sustainable Development Goals, those who are related to equity, there are just poor results, unfortunately. And if I can say something more about also the fragmentation at institutional level, we may say that there are some countries, some systems, like can be Italy, for example, Germany, or also Spain, where the evaluation practices vary significantly across jurisdiction. So if you consider, for example, national level or regional level, and depending on the administrative level, say standards can be considered in different ways. So at the national level, for example, standards on equity may exist on paper. I mean, they are on the paper that should be applied, but their implementation depends on regional capacities. And so even though there is, say, a law or there is a framework where it is written that we need to measure and to apply the equity concept, in the real end, at a regional level, there are very few capacities for doing such an evaluation. And because there are some other political priorities, or there are some local evaluation culture who do not consider equity as a prior element and that need to be evaluated. So this, of course, creates in the end a patchwork of approaches with very little cross-learning of harmonization. So we have differences in each country and also between countries or among countries. We can say that there is something in common, say at in a fraction, we can say that there is for sure a conceptual confusion, and there are also data gaps in the European countries, and also limited evaluator training, and also political underinvestment on the equity concept. So I think that these four key pillars should be considered in order to work on these and try to improve the sensibility or the awareness about importance of equity. With particular regard to the Italian situation, if I can bring my also expertise, there are some strong, as you probably already know, strong territorial inequalities about between north and south area. There is a north-south divide, and this make particularly important this fragmented governance structure, which makes the coordination action also very difficult. So one thing is to apply the equity concept and measurement in the north, and the other thing is in the south, because the framework is completely different. And so we need to consider also that there are such differences even in each country, so in a member state. And so also we need also to consider that there is a civil society tradition, which is called in Italy terzo settore, which advocates for equity but lacks for formal influence and evaluation standards. So this is another way. For example, in the university where I work, normally there is like a unit which is looking at these particular elements. They are looking for the application of the equity concept, but they do not have really the tools for measuring it. So it's just something that is written on the paper, but they are really unable to measure these aspects. With regard to the role that VOPEs can have in promoting the equity principle, we may say that there are probably some roles that we can have, like the advocacy, for example, by promoting the integration between of equity into professional standards. So we need to invest in these human capital requirements, and so they should explicitly include equity in the evaluation standards, in ethical guides that we are using for the implementation of some concepts, also on quality criteria. And this means, of course, that we are going beyond the general fairness in the evaluation, and there are some specific concrete also expectation with regard to the equity evaluation. And so the evaluators should assess not only the distributional effects but also the real equity concepts. And so it is not only the Gini index or other elements that we can use for proving the positive effects benefits. So calculating the benefits on the different distribution of income, for example, among population, but equity is something different. So we need to push on this in order to have some results. And also we need to offer some, I think, some methodological training on how we can really make operative the equity calculation. This can bring us to give tools in order to make a better interpretation of data. For example, as I was mentioning, for example, the distribution of income, we need to read among rows. I mean, if there is something that is really related to the equity concept, and we need to also engage the marginalized communities in order to consider how equity is really working after the implementation of projects or of policies. Otherwise, I mean, we cannot concentrate on some part of the on some clusters of population. And this training for sure can target not only the evaluators, but also the evaluation commissioners and also the policymakers. It is not only a problem of evaluating it if it is not priced by or taken into consideration for those who are going to make the policy on the territory. So we need to have a cross knowledge, and the results should reach the policymakers for sure. And also we may say that there are some experiences. I can bring the experience that we are having with Nicola Orlando in our Associazione Italiana di Valutazione, HIVE. There is a working group which is working just on this, and recently it has been established, and they are working on social inclusion and equity in evaluation. So we are working on this in order to bring the flavor of using equity as a normal indicator, a normal aspect that we need to consider. This group aims to bridge the evaluation research with social policies analysis, and to develop, in particular, the practical guidance for evaluators, and to advocate also for stronger and equity requirements in public procurement of evaluation. So this is a very important element, and I think that this group can really bring some results on the table, and can be really appreciated in terms of contribution for bridging the gap. So by concluding, I mean, just few words, and we may say that advocacy advocating about the equity principle in evaluation is not just something that can improve the quality of the technical aspects. Say it is not only another indicator that we are adding to those we already had, but it's something that can recognize the value of the evaluation itself in political acts in particular, and also to reinforce the existing of inequalities or challenges in our society. So I think that this is very important. So we need to apply in concrete terms that the topic that no one has to be left behind, but we need to measure it, and we have to try to cover this gap by providing the measure of this left behind. You know, otherwise we are simply talking, and we are simply covered by very nice words, but we are not really measuring in technical terms elements that are really so important for our society. So I think that I can stop here, and I mean, I can stay for sure for questions, and I can solicit it also the public.
Thank you very much, Elisabetta. You mentioned that equity is embedded, for instance, in European Social Fund, but I think it should be embedded in the whole cohesion policy, right? Because of this disparities, not only among our countries, but within our countries, as you mentioned. So.
Yes, absolutely, yes, yeah.
Thank you very much. So let me check if we have Mihailo Diukic with us.
Hi, Monica.
Oh,
Sorry for being
great.
late. I'm
I am
here.
so
Yeah.
happy. Okay. So let's talk about next principle. Oh, wait. Oh, yes, right. Sustainable development, right?
Okay. Thank you very much for the introduction. So I cannot see slides or
You cannot see?
yes, but it's probably yeah. I cannot. But you can. Yeah.
Yeah. So maybe I will share the screen again, right?
Okay.
Yes?
Okay.
So maybe you will see it. Okay. Once again, maybe because you joined us. And
Yeah. Probably
yeah.
because I joined later.
Yes.
So you're supposed to oh yeah.
Yeah.
Now it's okay. So yeah, thank you for inviting me as a representative of the Western Balkan Evaluation Network, and also we have our small community of evaluators from Serbia. It became formally recognized last year, and we are trying to contribute as much as we can to the work of the Western Balkan evaluation community. And okay, we have a history of cooperation for more than a decade now. And last week we had a conference in Sarajevo, so we actually addressed some of these topics there in Sarajevo a couple of days ago, and now I will speak about sustainable development, which probably addresses all of the concepts that you presented includes all of the concepts that you presented during previous presentations and sessions. So as just to start with my experiences and our organizational experiences. So in general, they are related to evaluations of projects, public policy documents, out of which some explicitly involve sustainable development aspects. Like there is one project that we're currently involved in, its own ongoing evaluation related to afforestation or land degradation, but there are projects that explicitly involve sustainable development as one of their main desired impacts. There are also some other which implicitly involves sustainable development aspects, as almost any intervention does. So there are some youth policy interventions, some local development interventions that are not particularly focused on sustainable development, but as I just said, so sustainable development actually should be considered in every intervention, in conducting every intervention. So basically it's much easier. There is a limited opportunity for conducting evaluations in Serbia, that's true, but there are of course some evaluations supported and conducted by the international organizations and international, like UN or some other international organizations. So it's much easier when you have some framework, when you have in your terms of reference already envisaged sustainable development, or some analysis of environmental aspects, for instance, already requested. But there are also the cases of evaluations, some small local evaluations that we conducted where they should include these aspects. Unfortunately, not at least not explicitly. Of course, there is experience of evaluating some project proposals under the regional or international calls for projects, and this is also interesting experience of analyzing. They all have let's say sections which provides space for explaining, elaborating relationship between their desired proposed intervention and some aspects of sustainable development, green transition, etc. And of course, we have opportunity to see different approaches of linking proposed intervention with some sustainable development aspects. Of course, some of them are let's say more formally elaborated, just declaratively to fill the form, and of course more meaningful relationships are something that we are looking for, and sometimes we are really impressed to see how the proposals successfully link their intervention with sustainable development, and even considering some revisions in existing approaches of the policymakers. Of course, as you probably heard, we had the opportunity to analyze and different practices of VOPEs across Europe with regards to sustainable development. As we found out that practices are relatively diverse, and of course, it is also following their different level of development and different focuses and priorities. But there are some, unfortunately, in the Balkans, this has not been, let's say, identified as main orientation of VOPEs. that are more focused on raising, in general, raising importance, awareness of the local policy community and local stakeholders about importance of evaluation, about importance of evidence-based policy making, etc. So based on that, please the next slide, if you can. Based on that, I would like to underline several challenges in applying sustainable development practices, both in throughout project implementation and of course when evaluating specific interventions. So one typical case is example of challenges that we are facing and our colleagues are facing when developing interventions and when evaluating, is to link intervention with the SDG agenda to, let's say, operationalize a project idea and concrete outcomes with the SDG agenda. It's sometimes not easy to clearly formulate project outcomes and ideas with SDGs and specific indicators. And also we in Serbia, we say that we are relatively successful in let's say that monitoring aspect of SDG, as our statistical office, for instance, it is now monitoring I don't know by heart, but about 2/3 of all indicators are now being collected and monitored, which is let's say a solid improvement compared to a couple of years ago and compared to our regional peers, but it is still not satisfactory. It is still not sufficient. There are some other problems in that context, mainly related to nationalization of the SDGs and localization, local aspects, as we are still struggling to translate all these goals to the local level and to more, let's say, integrate sustainable development not just declaratively, but concretely in local development interventions. In terms of evaluation, it's sometimes not easy to let's say balance between different conflicting interests of different stakeholders. In some interventions that that I participated in, that we could notice that all the actors are somehow feeling contributing to SDG, but from different aspects, and let's say credibly analyzing their efforts and their contribution to the specific project is sometimes not easy. For instance, if you want to implement intervention in forestry sector and do a forestation project, which is of course very important and has clear links to SDGs. It's you feel like some other stakeholders, like representatives of the agriculture policy sector or environmental policy sector, are trying to block the process because they're trying to implement their own agenda, which is also contributing to SDG agenda. So it's not easy to let's say balance between goals of different stakeholders, which are all contributing to the same mission to achieve sustainable development goals from the national, let's say, perspective. So there are, of course, no magic solutions for this problem. We are trying to apply participatory evaluation methods to analyze from different angles and to let's say consider our job in a holistic manner. We try to analyze sustainable development through all criteria, through coherence, through relevance. We are trying to better understand this very complex, let's say, challenge of evaluating SDGs and in general sustainable development role in each of these evaluations. So the last slide is about role of VOPE, of NESE, or Western Balkan Evaluation Network, as a community which gathers our local evaluation actors. So we are still, as I already noticed, in the phase of raising awareness about promoting evaluation culture, but we are trying to contribute also in specific aspects. Of course, there are some aspects that evaluation communities in the region are more successful. For instance, in terms of gender equality initiatives and some aspects of good governance. In some aspects, we are not so involved, like democracy or maybe some other aspects. Sustainable development is let's say well covered through that monitoring initiatives, interventions. There are some platforms, local platforms like SDGs for All, and we can say that databases is not perfect, but in this phase, let's say, satisfactory. And the role of VOPE in the following period would be definitely to try to propose very concrete guidelines and practices and this should go in parallel with processes of promoting the profession of evaluators, which is sometimes under let's say not so visible in the local context, and in general importance of evaluation is not so well explained in the local community, and this is our role as a VOPE and in general in the Western Balkan region to initiate more discussions. And I think that sustainable development will be a part of that process, of course.
Thank you very much, Mihailo.
Thank you.
Sustainable development is probably one of the most discussed principle, right, in evaluation, but at least at my country, it's not so great results. We have this national review on SDGs, but it is, as you said, more about monitoring than about the evaluation. Okay, so thank you very much. Oh, sorry, I will stop sharing the screen. Okay, and look at the chat if we have any questions. I can't see any question, but maybe, oh yes, there is Alma Porta who would like to share her opinion. Yes? Can you unmute yourself, Alma? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, perfect. Do you hear me well? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, so thank you very much for the insightful presentations and by showing us how the key horizontal principles can be grounded in a theoretical and a practical way, because it was wonderful. My name is Alma Porta, and I'm here as Vice President of APREVAL, the Iberian Association of Evaluators. And I would like to share that at APREVAL, we work to enrich the evaluation profession in service of the common good, just by moving from the idea of the evaluation as a technical exercise towards the idea of evaluation as an instrument for social justice and significant impact. It was shared here today. So we will warmly invite you to the 7th November seminar we have on evaluation experiences that we co-organized with the master's degree in evaluation at the Complutense University of Madrid, which you can follow also online because online participation is also available. And it's important because for us it will be a peer-to-peer space with associations, organizations, public administrations, companies, academia, and of course evaluation professionals to reflect on the Spanish evaluation ecosystem and how it strengthens professionalization grounded in key horizontal principles, to create a space for ethical debate that Aida introduced before. And finally, I would also like to share in this space that the Complutense's master's degree is open for pre-enrollment, and they have also agreements with universities that include a part tuition discounts, and they will be delighted to explore joint collaboration with evaluation professionals in Poland and other countries. And well, that's all. Thank you very much for all the interventions. And it was a pleasure for us.
Thank you very much, Alma, for sharing your experience. I think it's a good idea to have also international groups, not only working groups within our VOPEs, yes, but because it is our common issue, yes, not just at the national level. Okay. Maybe are there any questions, any comments? So, yes, Tina?
Well, okay, thank you. I was just wondering, and it's a simple reflection on we are discussing both a theoretical and practical way how to embed all these key horizontal principles in evaluation. But at the end, I think that we need to reflect on how they will be embedded. I mean, the practical way, because sometimes if we treat all these principles at the same time within, let's say, most evaluations, then we come out with a burden, not a burden in the way of resources and the way you see and assess things. So I was wondering what could be the solution for, at least in a simple way, provide the evidence of all these criteria being evaluated and having something to say as an output or an outcome.
Very difficult context, yes, in which evaluation is conducted. So what do you think? Does it make sense to conduct evaluation in such a context marked by human rights vulnerability or absence of democratic governance? What's your opinion?
Yeah, thank you, Monica. Well, this is very difficult and challenging questions, but we can at least, as evaluators, reflect on when we are in a process of evaluating in context or in situations of human rights violations, or let's see, when we have a clear hegemony of a group of actors due to the political, economic, or even technical issues. One question is important. The constructive and democratic game of evaluation cannot occur. And then even we have even there is a sincere or well-intentioned motivation for this evaluation. The contribution of evaluation to the policy debate is nullified by a large power structures or social conflagration. I mean, when we are aware of this context, and we are aware also of what the purpose of the evaluation, and if we think of what we can be referred to green or alkene on what the purpose of the evaluation are, then really we have to ask ourselves, does it make sense? And in this case, we couldn't even avoid, because of the requirements of the evaluation, and we were like moving ahead in this evaluation in this context. And really we during the evaluation and after the evaluation, at least during the evaluation, we had many reflections and we raised many challenging questions. But the question, yes, we faced, of course, was the ethical, our responsibility of profession as evaluators, and what we really are looking for, and if really this this evaluation will contribute to something. I mean, I advocate for evaluation and the purpose of the evaluation, but also I recognize in this experience, in such extreme circumstances, the evaluation lose its significance entirely. So, I mean, I will left this reflection for all of you. Thank you.
I hope this session was just an initial activity aimed at using key horizontal principles in the evaluation process. As you see, and it was mentioned during the speeches of our guests, these principles are crucial for transformational evaluation. So if we want to see changes in the world, not just in project and programs, we should definitely use key horizontal principles in our evaluations. So thank you very much. Now we can go to the main room. Thank you.